what is then the basic thing, components of an ijara contract? Of course, like any other sale, you have two parties, the contracting parties, lessor and lessee, and you have object of the contract, which is describing the usufruct or service, and its price, which is normally called rental. And we have the pronouncement of the agreement that I rent you this car for a month and you accept its taking it in rental for a month. In a simple way, take an example of Kuwait Finance House, which is an Islamic bank in Kuwait. Lease a car from its own inventory. Unlike all other Islamic banks, Kuwait Finance House has inventory of its own, especially of home appliances and cars and similar things like carpets and these kind of things. So it has its own inventory. No other Islamic bank in the world has inventory except Kuwait Finance House. So lease a car from the inventory to a customer. The customer will give promissory notes for the rentals. For instance, per week, leasing it for 5 weeks, $500 per week. So gives the promissory notes for the 5 week period. And of course, on the time of payment will be done. At the end of the lease, obviously, the car will be returned to the lessor. The relationship between the two parties will have to define, of course, the responsibility of the lessor. And then we will see the responsibility of the lessee also. Allowing the lessee to extract what he purchased. He purchased the usufruct or the service. In the example of car rental, so giving the key, giving him the permission to drive this car, although he's not owner of it. So if any police stops him, the car is in his hand in a legal way. So you have a contract that you put it in the drawer, and that proves that you are in a legal way, enablement. If the car broke on the way, it is the responsibility, of course, of the lessor to maintain this usability. So give me the car in a working manner, I drive it, and then you are required to maintain it in the same way. And that varies really whether we talk about long-term leasing or short-term leasing. Usually in short-term leasing, even the oil change will be the responsibility of the lessor, not the lessee. It's only the gas that you use. It's your responsibility because that is something depend on how much you push on the device of the gas pressure. Most of this responsibility is normally insurable. So the lessor can ensure that the car will continue functioning during this period, and if anything happens, it will be replaced by a similar car that provides exactly similar service. In case of a major maintenance needed, while during the rent period will stop for that, the time that is taken by this major maintenance. It remains the responsibility of the lessor to keep the ability to extract the usufruct from the car, keep it all the time available. Then minor maintenance things depend on really the period of leasing in a house or apartment rentals. Um, there are variations between countries and communities. In certain communities, if you rent, say, an apartment or a house for a short period, a summer vacation of 2 weeks or a month or so, then all small and big maintenances will be on the lessor. But if you rent an apartment for a year, even painting it will be the responsibility of the lessee. That at the end of the year, you are required to give it back to the lessor with a new painting, the same way you got it with a new painting at the beginning of that period. This is usual and customary in some countries or in some communities, in some cities, but it may not be the same in other areas. So this goes by all these minor maintenances go by the what is usual and customary in that part of the land. Of course, operational maintenance, like filling the gas in the car, is the responsibility of the lessee. Now, in addition, what are the responsibilities of the lessee in the lease agreement? Of course, return the asset in same conditions, in same working conditions, realizing that the wear and tear that is normal and expected for that period is not, definitely not the responsibility of the lessee, because it is expected, and you are including the compensation for the wear and tear for that period is included in the rent. You collect it part of the rent, of course. Then when we say returning the car or the asset in same condition, means in same normal working conditions, except for the normal wear and tear. Paying the rent and keep assets safe while it is with him. And here comes the concept of amana hand. If you remember, we discussed it in the different kinds of contract, that there are contracts that are amana hand contract, and employment and leasing is part of amana hand contract, meaning that the hand of a person, here the lessee, is on a property that belongs to somebody else, here the lessor. So the car that I leased, it's in my hand and under my disposition, of course, for use, not to be able to sell it or hurt it. And I am licensed by the contract, the lease contract, to use it the normal use. If I don't make any abnormal mistake or any violation of the contract or any intended harm to the asset, then I won't be responsible for any other thing. For instance, if I park the car in normal way and then some hit and run car while parked on the side of the street normally, and there are many other cars like it, that's a normal place for putting the car for short period. Then a hit and run car purged into this car, I will not be responsible for that. It is the liability of the lessor, not my liability, because I did not do anything in violation of contract or in any negligence. Negligence violation of contract, and intended harm to the asset. These will make me responsible, will make the amana hand responsible. But outside these, the amana hand is not responsible for what happens to the property itself. The lessor is not responsible for normal wear and tear, of course, and he is not responsible for damages which are not caused by abuse of asset, negligence, or violation of contract. For instance, if when I drive the car, I am supposed to follow the traffic rules in the city or wherever I am driving, and if I got a traffic violation, that is my responsibility, not the responsibility of the lessor. And this is why in car leasing, when you return the car, they check whether there is any violation that is done during this period. It comes immediately and will be known through the computer system, that traffic violation. And then you will be charged when you return the car. You will have to pay for that traffic violation. Or if the car says it's limited to the boundary of the country, I cannot take a car from Ottawa and go with it to Albany, New York, because the contract does not allow me to go into to Albany. And if anything happens to the car outside the boundary of, say, Ottawa or Tokyo, or sorry, or Canada, then the damage that may happen outside is my responsibility as a lessee. Uh, Now, if we go to the economic characteristics of Ijara, rental has to be known prior to each contracted period. If the contracted period is five months, then the rental has to be known at the beginning of the 5 months. If I rented for 1 month, renewable 5 times, then the rent should be known at the beginning of the contract, and then at the beginning of each following month. It may change, though. We may make a formula for each following month. For instance, the rent will increase 5% or decrease 5%. Or we can change it by any other agreement, exchange of messages on the WhatsApp before the beginning of the new month. For each month, we will make that agreement, or it could be also variable based on an index which is not created by either one of us, the contractor, like an external index, price consumer index that is announced by the government, for instance. It may be reduced by it. We change the rent in accordance with this consumer price index. So rental could be then made variable in that sense. That makes it more flexible. In fact, rentals are debt on the lessee because the rent is a sale contract. It transfers ownership. What does the lessee own or owns? The lessee becomes an owner of the usufruct for the period of the contract. And against that, he becomes under debt to the lessor. So the rental that are not paid at the beginning are for the whole period, really, are debts on the lessee, and that depends on the period. Suppose could be many contract in residential apartment, especially you rented for a year, but the rental is paid every month, say at the beginning of each month. uh, if the rent for a 12-month period, then the total amount of rent for the whole 12 months becomes a debt on the lessee at the time of signing the contract. You may pay the first payment for the first month, then remaining is a debt that is due in the future at the beginning of each month, whatever the contract says. And you are an owner of the usufruct for the whole year from the time the contract is signed. So notice here, what is the usufruct that you purchased? It's a right, really. The usufruct is a right to use the car in the normal way, any way you like to use it, or to use the apartment in a normal way, any way you want. And this, you own this usufruct. So usufruct is defined in both Sharia law and in all other laws. Usufruct is defined as a property. So when you own a property, essentially the principle is you are free to do whatever you like with your property. You may keep the car in front of your door for a month, not using it at all. It's your prerogative to do whatever you like. Or you may drive it every day for 350 miles, which again, it's your decision. It's your right to use it, of course, within the limit of the contract. So you are the owner. Can you sell your property? Yes, you can also theoretically sell your property. There are properties that vary from one person to another in their use, and very often contract of these properties will have an added condition that you cannot sublease it to another person without the approval of the lessor. And with this condition goes another implicit condition that the lessor cannot withhold his approval without good reason. For instance, I hire a horse to take me from here to some other place. Say, here I am in Istanbul and I want to go to another place, another city, Bursa, which is about 120 kilometers from here. And when the horse owner rents me this horse, I mean, he of course rented to me, and my weight is only 70 kilos. Can I sublease it to a person whose weight is 300 kilos, like a Japanese wrestler? I cannot really. I can rent it to a person like me whose weight is 75 kilo or 65 kilo, within a reasonable range of my weight. But the 400 kilo person or wrestler will really hurt that horse. The horse would be a lot more tired by that. So it hurt the body itself. Not only you extract the usufruct, you are supposed to extract the usufruct without hurting the corpus itself. For here, uh, in other words, for these kind of differences, the lessor usually put a condition in the contract that you cannot sublease it without my approval, simply for preserving the right of it, that you cannot really lease it in a way that may hurt my corpus, my property. But anyway, you own the property, which is the usufruct, and you are under debt. The lessor owns a debt on you for the non-paid rent until the end of the period. Uh, Now, the owner of the asset can make all transactions. That's number three of the leased asset. If I own the asset and I lease it, I can still sell it to somebody else, but without violating the right of the lessee. In other words, say a car is rented for a month, I can sell it even now during that month to another person, provided that delivery of the car will be at the end of the month. And of course, delivery of the car, keeping in mind the wear and tear for the rest of the month that is included. So I'm selling you the car as it will be at the end of the month, of course, in a normal kind of conditions, not that it is hurt by any additional hurt that may be done during that period. So I can sell it with delivery in the future, to preserve the right of the lessee. Same thing, the lessee can also do whatever he likes or she likes with their own property, which is the usufruct. They can also sublease it to somebody else, as we discussed it, without hurting the right of the owner of the asset itself or the corpus. Uh, Now, a lease can be contracted for non-existing asset or for suspended future time. What does that mean? It means that I want to build a building. Before I build it, and only on the plans of construction and so on, I can lease that house. Or I can lease an apartment in that building on the third level, and the right side apartment, suppose it's two sides apartments. So I can lease it before it is even constructed. Well, and of course, in the condition of that lease, we will say that delivery will be on such future date. So I can lease it, and the building does not exist yet to begin with. Also, it could be for an existing thing. I have a car which is leased to X for 3 months, and the 3 month ends on say May 15, and we are now at the beginning of April. I can lease that car for 2 months beginning from May 15. That is the meaning of suspending the contract on a future date. This contract is signed now, and he may pay me the rent even now for the whole 2 months from May 15 until July 15. But I can lease it now, and he becomes an owner of that usufruct from May 15 until July 15. Yet the car is not available before May 15. I am suspending this contract on a future date, which is May 15. That is permissible. Notice when we discuss sale, all these kind of conditions are not permissible. You cannot sell a specific thing that you don't own. That car I own is a specific thing, and I rent it to a person whose rent ends on May 15, and I rent it to another one from May 15 onward, that is permissible, and that is a specific item. Again, the same thing when I am building the building. Okay, it's also a specific item, and I can rent an apartment in it before even constructing the building on the basis of the plans. These do not exist in sale contract, in sale on credit or sale on future delivery, whether it is salam sale or sale on credit. You cannot sell what you don't own. If it is specific, you cannot sell and send the sale on future date. I cannot sell an item, and this contract is only effective on May 15. I cannot make that a kind of sale contract. So in sale, you cannot use these flexibilities that exist in ijara, not in sale. Proceeds of sale of usufruct can be used for to finance construction of the leased asset. Very often, and many people do that. I lease the building I want to build. I own the land. I prepared the plans. I leased the different apartment in it for, say, different future period effective from the completion of construction, and I have the date of completion, say it is January 1st, 2026. So I lease it from now and take the lease, use it for construction. That is a practice that is done by many contractors who intend that their construction is for lease, not for sale. Same thing, so I can lease it and use the rental money for the construction. We have a kind of ijara that we have a built-in condition in it that while you are paying the rent, you also pay with it an amount to buy additional part or to buy parts of that asset. Like for instance, you rented for you rent an apartment for 10 years, but along with each yearly rental payment, you buy 1/10 of the property itself. So you pay an additional amount to buy 1/10. The second year you buy a second tenth, the third year you buy, and when you pay the last year, you would have paid only rent for the smallest part, the last part that you still do not own. So in this case, uh, rent decline with time because you are owner of part of that property, and of course you don't pay rent for the part that you own. And at the end of the lease period, you find yourself an owner, become the owner of the whole property after paying the last rental part. And the last rental part will be a very small part because it's only for the last 10% of that property in this example. So in these kind of leases or ijara contract, there is a partial compensation for delinquency. Suppose I did not pay the rent of the second year, and of course, with the rent of the second year, I did not pay also purchase an added part. So if I don't pay the installment that is required for the second year, the rent continues as it was in the first year. And the rent will not decline because you didn't buy that portion that you are supposed to buy at the end of the first year, beginning of the second year. And if you don't buy that portion, then the rent will be on the total amount of the asset, not on the total amount minus the part that you purchased. That means that the rent will remain higher than it was supposed to be had you purchased an additional portion. And this means that you got the rent will be a kind of compensation for delinquency. If you delay payment, the rent will continue the same as the previous month, will not decline. And that is, of course, you pay higher rent than when it declines. So this is like partial compensation for delinquency. I still collect rent on my property. The point number 8 here is flexibility of dates of payment and delivery. We notice the delivery in what is called the suspended contract, or the contract, ijara contract for an asset that does not exist yet. That's flexibility of date of delivery, but again, for rental it could be paid at the beginning, in the middle, 5 years after the end of the contract, at any time. It's subject to the agreement of the two parties. And notice, except in istithna sale, in sale on credit, and in salam sale, which is sale of future delivery and immediate payment, there is no flexibility. Sale on credit means you take delivery now, and that is now. No flexibility, not tomorrow. You take delivery at the time of contract, and you pay according to our agreement in the future date, one payment or on installment. Same thing in salam sale. You take delivery in a future date, and payment must be now. So there's no flexibility here. Whereas in ijara, you can pay the rent at any time, before the period of ijara, during it, or after it. The last point, which is also interesting, that both the property and the usufruct are amenable to securitization because they are real property. You cannot securitize debts because debts through time will not have the time value of debt. That is not acceptable in Sharia because, in fact, it does not exist. There is no time value of debt. Debt does not change through time. So is cash. Cash does not change through time. Of course, we assume that there is no inflation or deflation. That's a different issue. What is called this condition of ceteris paribus, that all other factors are constant, the same. So we are discussing only this point of debt. Debt does not increase or decrease through time. So cash, if it is in your pocket or in the vault, does not change also through time. It will remain the same amount that you have it in your pocket since yesterday until today. It will be the same. So time value of money and time value of debt does not exist in reality, and the claim it exists is a false claim. Now, properties, whether they are goods or services or assets, fixed assets, long living assets, all these properties may have different values at different times. And that depend on many elements that can be summarized in the market supply and demand of these items. So with that, then there is time value of assets or of goods or services, but there is no time value of money or debt. And if there is time value, and you own that property. The usufruct is a property that you own it by virtue of a lease contract. You can sell it at any time. You can divide it into pieces and sell it into pieces in the form of securitization. What does that mean in plain English language? Let's apply it on an example. I own a building, a 10-story building, and its value is $10 million in the center of Istanbul, suppose. And I can securitize this building, and the building is rented, all of it, and there is a management real estate management company that takes care of its rent, collecting rent and take maintenance and do all that, and it pays me the rent as a lump sum, say every month certain amount. I can issue 100 or say a 10 million share in the market. Call them whatever you want, certificate or sukuk or shares of owning this building. It is $10 million, and each share is, I issue, suppose 1 million. Each share is $10, and sell these shares in the market. That is securitization. I can do that. Now, this is the owner of a leased asset. Here I am the owner of a leased asset. I can securitize my property. The ownership of it is divisible, and it becomes negotiable, tradable in the market because I own a real property. It is not debt or cash. Debt or cash are also real. I don't say they are not real, but debt and cash do not have variation in their value through time. But properties have variation in its value through times. So I can securitize them, sell them in the market. I cannot securitize debts or simple pure cash stored in one place. Uh, of course, suppose in the same example, a person or a company leased from me the whole building for 1 million every year, and it leases it from me for a 10-year period. So it owns the usufruct of this building for 10 years, and at the beginning of each year is going to pay me $1 million rent. Can it securitize what it owns? Yes, it owns the usufruct. Suppose exactly after 5 seconds of signing the first lease, it still owns the whole period of usufruct for the 10 years. It can securitize them and sell them as certificates. Each certificate will represent, say, 1/1 million of the lease of this building, if we issue 1 million certificate. So, and they can sell it in the market at any negotiable price in the market. So here, the amenability to securitization is caused by the fact that these are properties that generate added value, not mute properties. Inside parentheses, mute properties are debts or cash in vault, cash held as cash. These are mute, do not generate added value. And in Sharia, because they do not generate added value, they cannot be traded in the market, and they can only be exchanged at face value. Okay. Now, the lease contract, is it a financing from, or it is a financing from outside the balance sheet or the budget? What does that mean? At the meeting of the General Assembly of my shareholders, when I present my balance sheet does not show that the building of our headquarters of the company we are in, and this building is a huge building. It's $100 million building, like Exxon building, for instance, in wherever it is. Uh, this $100 million building is not shown in my balance sheet, and no shareholder will question me in the General Assembly meeting that, oh, you are really using too much fixed assets, and if you sell it and use the money for trading, you will make a circulation of the asset 3 times in a year, instead of uh, keeping them in this fixed asset that doesn't really save you much. It shows only rent paid if I am not the owner. So I avoid this hassle in the balance sheet discussion in the General Assembly. In other words, it shows that I have all my resources are used more for really generating profit, for being used more than once in a year, rather than being fixed or stored in a fixed asset that doesn't really help, or doesn't help much. So this is an asset to many businesses, and this is why many businesses prefer rental over buying the asset, whether the machines they use, the caterpillars they use, the cars they use, and many companies now go for leasing cars instead of owning them, the car they use for their businesses, to avoid kind of holding these assets, or their part of their capital, really with less benefit, especially if they can turn over their mobile asset 2 3 times in a year. So that will be better for them. And again, the second characteristic of this contract, that it is flexible. Its flexibility is very useful. Amenability to hybrids also is another thing, other than amenability to securitization. Here, amenability to hybrid. One hybrid I mentioned to you already, which is known even in the classical, which that is the ijara ending with ownership. We combine with ijara a contract that you buy pieces of the property itself that is leased to you, buy it over time with payments of lease. You pay additional part to buy part of that property, and by purchasing you reduce the amount of rent that you will be required to pay. So that makes يعني one of these you can make istisna order, but istisna ending with lease. Again, this is another flexibility, another hybrid that can be created. The asset doesn't exist, but build it and I will lease it from you. That istisna for lease, or istisna to lease. Okay. Ijara, then We need to remember it is an exchange contract, it is an amana hand contract, and it has high flexibility in its conditions. Some of the issues that come to us here that need to be discussed really in ijara, you notice the nature of ijara separate the usufruct from the corpus. The corpus will be owned by one person and the usufruct is owned by the other. So whenever each owner has the full right to do whatever he or she likes with their ownership, with their property. But of course, since my property is related to the property of another person, we have to add here a condition provided that your action does not hurt the property of the other person. Whether as lessor or as lessee, you can do whatever. You have full authority over your own property, but you must not hurt the property of the other guy. And if you hurt it, you become liable. If your action causes any harm to the property of the other guy to which your property is related, you are disposing, taking action on usufruct, or the lessor takes action on the corpus. Either one has to keep in mind that any action that hurt the other owner should be compensated. So there is always no infringement on the right of the other person, on the right of the other owner to which my property is related. This is the effect of separation of corpus from usufruct, without limiting the rights of each one of them. But of course, because the properties of both of them are related, there must be no harm and commitment to compensate if any harm is done because of your action on the other property of the other person. Again, possession and delivery. Suppose I rent an apartment and I rent it for 12 months, and I decide I want to sublease it, lease it to another person. I can do that, and my property is free definitely, and the lessor has no right to withhold without good reason his approval. He'll give me approval because I'm going to rent it exactly to family like my family. They won't make any different use of the usufruct than what I would have made. So it is about the same, and it'll be fine. Okay, but my property begins on May 15. I rented it effective May 15, and now we are still at the beginning of April. Uh, can I rent it from now? Can I sublease it on May 15 from now? The answer is yes. In other words, I didn't take the key yet, but I have the contract and I own that usufruct. I am free to dispose of my usufruct any way to write. The condition that we put in sale does not apply here. That is, you cannot sell what you don't have possession of. That is in sale. But in sale of usufruct, that condition does not apply. So I can sell the usufruct I own or the service I own. I can sell it even before delivery, even if it is suspended on a future time. I'll give you another example. Suppose I bought the service from the University of taking a course on Islamic finance. And I paid the price of this course for the full semester, $400. Uh, can I sell this price to another student? Can I sell this service of that course to another student? Yes, of course. And it's going to begin next September. We are now still 4 months before the beginning of that semester. So I bought. Can I sell it to another student? Yes, I can. I have the right to do that. Of course, provided that the other student will fulfill the other conditions of the university. So I can do that again and sell that service to another person. So what is the meaning of delivery in usufruct? Delivery means really consuming it, because if the semester begins, I begin taking the delivery, and week by week I take delivery of that service that I purchased. If you want to add the condition of taking delivery, means I cannot sell it unless I take complete delivery of it, and delivery of the service will only be completed at the end of the period of that service, at the end of the semester. And if at the end of the semester the service doesn't exist anymore, I own the service for that semester. But at the end of the semester, if you want to impose on me, you cannot sell what you don't have full delivery of. That means you are telling me you cannot sell it until after it is consumed. It vanishes. It doesn't exist anymore. And that is too much limitation of my property. If I own a property, I can sell it at any time. How come you put the condition of delivery or possession on it? Possession wouldn't happen until after, at the end of the usufruct. Only then I can claim I took full possession of that usufruct, of that property. So this is why the condition is completely relaxed. The last point is very interesting. One of you is going to jump on me and tell me, well, come on, this is a financial lease then. I wouldn't worry. I wouldn't care. I told him, oh, then what? Well, he said, we in finance distinguish between operational lease and financial lease. And okay, so I asked him, where did you get this from? He said, well, the tax law clearly says, and the tax instructions in United States says that if you lease a thing and during the lease you use 90% of the economic time of the asset, economic value or economic age of the asset, if you use 90% of the economic age of the asset, then they define it as financial lease. Or again, there is another definition. If you pay during the lease 75 during the contract, 75 of the price of the asset, in addition to the rent, then it is considered a financial lease. And in financial lease, the lessee can take exemption for the depreciation, asset depreciation provision. He can reduce the profit before tax by the amount of depreciation of the asset. Whereas if it is not financial lease, operational lease, then the lessor is considered the owner, and the lessor is the one who is authorized to take provision for depreciation of the asset. So I tell you, okay, then what? That definition is a tax definition and and an accounting definition, who can put the amount of or the price of this asset in its balance sheet, the lessee or the lessor. That's an accounting definition and a tax definition. Okay, I'll ask you, what is then the legal definition? Who owns this asset? You would tell me, oh, exactly, definitely, the lessor owns the asset, and this ownership will not be transferred until the end of that lease. I would tell you, okay, it's fine. Sharia is a system of law. It's not a tax system, and it's not an accounting system. From accounting system and from tax system, call it whatever you like. But for me, whether you want to call it operational lease or financial lease, for me, it is simply ijara. It is simply lease. I wouldn't worry about your definitions. Okay? So, but uh, you may call it financial lease. Some of the ijara may be considered by tax people or by accountant as financial lease, and some of the ijara, both are financing contract, will be considered as operational lease. I wouldn't worry about that. So call it whatever you like. To me, it is simply ijara. And I wouldn't really care about how you treated in tax for tax purposes or for accounting purposes. So the ijara then can be manipulated to create a new contract a lot more easier. You can sell the leased asset. While they are leased, you can sell them. You can sell the leased to be built asset. Again, here there is limited tradability. You can sell the lease to be built asset. It is not built yet. I sell it. It is committed to a lease, and I tell you, look, this building is going to give you 10% lease, rent every year, and this building is going to be built within 3 months or 6 months or whatever the period, the construction period, gestation period for it. I can sell it now, yes, but again, why limited tradability? Because the buyer cannot sell it until it is available in full. The buyer will have to wait for selling it until it is available, because here we are talking about a specific thing, which is this building on this land with these plans. This is a specific thing, and that thing does not exist yet. You cannot really then, the buyer won't be able to sell it or even to lease it, sublease it to another, cannot now. He can lease it, he can buy it, but cannot. It is one time and not tradable after that until it is completed and until the usufruct really becomes available. Sale of services to be founded, sale of a service of a to be founded institution. We want to create a university, and from now we sell the credit hours in the of teachings in this university, and we take the money to build the university. University is still only a piece of land. I don't have laboratories. I don't have all facility of the university, and I sell the credit hours of that university now. Yes, that's permissible. And again, here there is a limited tradability. Those who bought from me this usufruct cannot sell them. Why? The question is why It is very important because that answer to that question, why limited tradability? Why only once you can sell it on description, but not again? Because the moment you want to sell it again, I am then selling a specific thing that I own. I am not selling a thing on description. I am selling that specific thing that I own, and that specific thing that I own is only a debt on the other, a debt on the issuer of on the one who sold me that service, the credit hours of that university. So what am I selling would be, I would be selling debt, and debt cannot be traded. Notice here is a debt of service, a debt of credit hours in the university that is going to be established on this land. I can sell it for the first time with that description, but the moment I buy a service, I buy, say, 10 credit unit in the School of Medicine in that university, which is to be built with all its laboratories, etc., and professors will be hired and all that. But I cannot sell these 10 credit hours until the university is completed and the service becomes available. Once the service becomes available and the university is completed and it announces we are starting classes, say on September 15, then only at that time I can sell my usufruct, my service. It's service unit here. Credit hours are service unit, not usufruct, because they have the service of professors and administrators, in addition to the buildings and the equipment, etc., etc. So this is the reason of limited tradability in each case. We talk about limited tradability is that the asset becomes a debt. What you own is a debt on other, and a debt cannot change through time. So you cannot sell it if it is a debt. Uh, the resale of usufruct and tradability is always available, permissible. Istisna to lease is one of the hybrids we can create. Use in corporate and infrastructure finance is ijara, is easily, can easily be used as a financing tool for corporate projects and for infrastructure. Uh, let's take an example here. We know if I own debts on others and I have promissory notes coming from rent or representing future rents, or as a result of sale on credit, I have promissory notes, and these promissory notes are in cash. I can go to a bank and discount them. So the bank will give me the discount, the present value of these, and that will be interest-based transaction, and that is not permissible in Sharia. Do we have, through the idea of leasing, do we have a permissible discounting process? I should say yes. And let's apply it on housing. In house financing, the person, the customer, wants to live in the house and become the owner at the end of the lease, become the owner. So here we apply lease with ownership. So with the lease, he will pay me along with the payment of each rent, say of each month, instead of being $1,000, he will pay 1,500. The first month or the first month rent, the 1,500 of it, say the rent will be 1,200, and only 300 will go toward purchasing. So he buys a very small portion of the property. Already he owns 20% usually in house financing. Now in America, at least, the central bank, not the central bank really, but this law that came during the Obama time, after the 2008 crisis, requires that the customer should finance 20% at least. So the customer already finances 20, and in the first month he is going to buy an additional portion for the value of only 300. The second installment, second month, will be 1,500 also, but of which the rent will be 100 1,150, take for example, just round figure, and 50, 1,150. And the amount, because he bought now, in addition to the original 20%, he bought now another portion whose value was $300. And the rent on that 300 is $50. The rent is declining, becomes in the second month 1,150, and the amount that is assigned to purchase becomes 350. In the third month, again, the amount that will be paid 1,500, but the distribution of this 1,500 will be 1,120 rent and 380 for the purchase, and so on with each time. We have, say, the financing is for 30 years. How much is 30 years for the month? How many months will be? The 360 month. So over 360 months, I have promissory notes from the customer from the beginning. Each one is for 1,500 for the coming 360 month. From the beginning, I got these promissory notes, and I 1,500 every month. Now, if I decide to sell my share, say exactly on the same day I made the contract, the customer owns 20%. He handed me the promissory notes of 1,500 each that are due monthly for the coming 360 months. Now, if I decide to sell my share in the property, that is the 80% of that apartment or house, I decide to sell it. I can sell it, and usually even Islamic finance companies in Canada and in the US sell them immediately. In fact, exactly on the same day. So when they sell them on the same day, they will have to hand over the promissory notes that are 1,500 each month, 360 promissory notes. And the price of the property, of course, now is almost the same price we purchased it. It's only 100,000. So I own only 80,000 of it. So what will happen here? I will have to hand over these to the, and I will pay me 80,000 80,000, say the 300,000, and he pays me only 80,000. Isn't that a form of discounting? It is really a form of discounting, and it is a Sharia permissible discounting. In other words, I am not discounting debts. You call it debts, but these are not debts really. These are promissory notes for the future, but I am selling the property. And because I sell the property, the right to collect these promissory notes becomes belonging to the new owner. So I have to hand him this promissory note. I'm not selling the promissory notes. I am selling the property, my 80% of property in that house. So the promissory notes are irrelevant. I have to hand them over because it is his right to collect these amounts. It's no more my right. But in a sense, for an outsider, he may say, "Here I got 80,000 for future promissory notes whose total value is 300,000." And that's correct. Yes, this is what I did. So this is like similar to discounting, but it is not really discounting. It is really Sharia compliant sale of property. Okay. So this is the example of it, and we can securitize them, etc., etc. So this is all of it. We will go to sharing contract, the second portion of our discussion today. We took more time, half the time. Inshallah, we'll make it a bit faster, but I need to take some 7, 8 minutes to make my Asr prayer. So please, I am going to put only the mute thing. Where is the mute here? Uh, okay. Here, I'll put the mute and I will leave it. Please excuse me, give me some Assalamu alaikum. I am back.
وعليكم السلام.
طيب. The second part of our discussion is sharing contract. I think I'll make an only introduction here, and then leave it for our next meeting. Consider it really two sessions, not really one session, because looks like it is a bit long. So the sharing contract, there are three kinds or three sharing contracts that are within the nominate category. Nominate category, remember, this is what is the well established throughout history in the Islamic fiqh and in Islamic Sharia in application and also in theory over more than 1,000 years. So these are well-known, well-established kinds of financial relationships. We got the sale, we got the ijara, and the sharing contract. And we noticed that each of these three categories has its own also versions and different kinds within the category. But you should notice also that what is the meaning that Islamic finance is done through historically in the Muslim land through these three categories of contract: sale, lease, and sharing, and not through other contract, specifically not through loan contract. That the implication is really very important, and I want you to keep that in mind, is that we deal with the real market. Islamic finance does not accept at all to deal outside the real market, the market of real transactions in the market. Okay? This is the issue of real transactions in the market. So that is what is important in it. Now, sharing contract, we have three kinds of contract. What is called sharika or partnership, say, and there are different kinds of it, or two kinds at least main. And then we have muzara'a, the word itself relates to agriculture. Zira'a is agriculture, and there are also other forms of muzara'a. I call them its derivatives. There is one called musaqa and another called mugharasa. We will look at them. And there is mudaraba, is another form like a corner solution of sharika. In sharika, parties contribute both funding and their own expertise. And in Mudaraba, one party contributes the funds and another party contributes the expertise, the management. So these are these contracts. So actually, we are going to talk about these different kinds of sharing contract. And what happened here? Okay. The principle of it is acceptable in Sharia, and we have a narration of a hadith by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, mentioned in the collection of Abu Dawood of a hadith. It says that God says that I am the third of the two partners as long as none of them betrays his companion. Two partners in any business, if they are honest to each other, God says that I am with them. I am the third one with them. So I'm always with them. So as a definition then, Sharika in general is mixing properties, management, and obligations as it is defined in the law. And the law is the Sharia. But we have two kinds, and this is very important to distinguish really the difference between these two kinds. One is contractual sharika, and the other one, it just happens. It's not, يعني, may not be intentional. Many reasons when two persons own the same thing. And they own it in whatever proportion they have between themselves, or they happen to be in it together. This kind, they call it sharikatu al-milk, sharika in ownership, sharikatu al-milk. And the contractual one, it is called sharikatu al-aqd. The distinction between these two is very important, in fact, and we need to keep it in mind. We will come to later have exact definitions for each one of them. So, sharikatu al-milk, let's use for it the English word co-ownership. Co-ownership may that is when two parties or more own the same thing. It may be caused by any reason, could be voluntary. Sometimes in say in many kinds of properties, you buy only 20% of that property. Another person buys 30%. A third one buys 70%. Each one is completely independent from the other and have nothing to do one with the other, have no interference by anyone with the property of the other. Like when you own this exists yani, today in our world, in London, for instance, in racing horses. You may buy the whole horse, or you may buy only a certain percentage of the horse, and somebody else buys another percentage, and so on and so forth. So you can, the horse will have different owner, and each one is independent from the other. They never meant or intended to really be partners. But I buy only 5% and I deal with it with the exchange, with the company that holds that management. In other words, it could be voluntary, that is caused by an action. I bought 10% of that racing horse. I could have bought 5%, I could have bought 2%, or any other. I could have not buy anything and go to some other property. I buy a horse in the farm and I own the whole horse. That's a different kind of horse, which is fine. But the idea here, I entered into this purchase by my own will, and I become a co-owner in that property with others. Some properties are indivisible, like the horse. So suppose two persons own a horse. One of them owns 60% and the other owns 40%. What do we do? How do they use this horse? The obvious thing is that one of them could use 60% of the time of the horse, and the other one uses 40% of the time of the horse. So we give it for 6 days. In each 10 days, we give 6 days to X and we give 4 days to Y. He takes care of the horse, of course, in for its feeding and so on, and he uses it and rides it, does whatever he likes to do with it during these days of his. This kind of distribution of the usability is called in our classical fiqh muhaya'a. Muhaya is the word derived from hay'a, and hay'a has one of its meaning is corpus. So, in other words, we are distributing the use of the corpus between them. That's the meaning of muhaya. We give the corpus to this for its share, and we give it to the other for its share again. But this co-ownership may happen voluntarily, and it's not so common when it happens voluntarily, but it may happen sometimes by law, especially through inheritance. In inheritance, some sibling inherit from their parent a property, and they may have different shares in owning that property. In our Sharia, the distribution of in inheritance should be to a male twice as much as to a female. It has an extremely important reason why it is that way, but this is not our subject now. We will discuss it later when we discuss the distribution of wealth, and we will discuss it inshallah. We have a session for that. So when it happens involuntarily, again, we use the way of muhaya'a, the same way. But notice also, muhaya'a becomes really like time sharing. I'm sure some of you know what time sharing means. In the American system, time sharing is considered a real estate transaction and real estate ownership. But really, you don't own the corpus of the property, you own only a time of using it. So, this time sharing is defined in the law is a time of use of that property. It is a specific property, but you don't own the property. The property is still owned by the company that sold you the time of it. Uh, in Sharia, time sharing is reflection of ownership of the corpus. So this is what is co-ownership, and co-ownership, of course, is applied in-house financing when an Islamic bank and a customer buy the house together, and the customer wants to live in it. The Islamic Bank objective is only to gain a secured fixed income throughout a period of time. And so the objective is different, and there's no management, common management between them. Each owner is independent from the other, and each one, in fact, can dispose of whatever he or she owns in it, or it being an Islamic bank, can dispose of it any way they like, and they can sell it or rent it to somebody or do whatever they like. That is the kind of co ownership. So it applies actually in today's world in some especially in house financing by Islamic banks. It is co ownership. We buy the house together, the Islamic bank and the customer. The customer pays 20% and owns 20%. The Islamic bank pays 80% and owns 80%. And the bank rents its share in the property to the customer. So the customer pays rent, and along with the rent throughout time, pays also amounts to purchase part of the property. So always purchases part of the property with it. To represent it in that way, we have owner one and owner two, and that the property is common between them, and we apply time sharing, which is muhaya'a. But notice this time sharing was invented and applied not only 30 years ago as it is in America, but it has been invented and applied more than 1200 years ago continuously in the Muslim land. And this is the kind of the Islamic time sharing. It's based on the corpus ownership, not only on owning time and without owning anything in the corpus. So co-ownership, uh, if the owned property is indivisible, the parties may have to resort to a kind of time sharing, muhaya, by distributing the use of the property in proportion to their respective ownership shares. The muhaya can be through mutual agreement, amicable agreement between the partners, or it can be determined by court. And that happens also many times in our history. If the co-owners agree on a common objective, they may create a contractual partnership. If they both of them want to rent it and make profit of it, or it's a land and they want to build it and then continue and so on, so they go together in it, and then they become, they convert the co-ownership into a contractual partnership. So before that, each one is completely independent from the other in its action in regard to its own property, and the other has no interference with the other property at all, unless they make a contract between themselves and become then not co-owners but become partners in a contractual manner. Okay. uh, well, of course they can do all what they want to do with it. uh, In-house financing is common, this co-ownership concept. The objective of the financing company in-house financing, in Islamic house financing, is to earn the rental income while it has an exit at the end of the leasing period, and the objective of the client is to reside in the house and later become the sole owner. So their objectives are completely different. I suggest that we will leave the contractual uh, sharika or contractual partnership, contractual sharing contract till our next meeting. The homework, please, is on the ijara for this week. I consider this session 8 really is two session, is session 8 and 8-1. So it is two sessions. We have a session on ijara and a session on on sharika, or on sharing contract, which we will continue discussing it. We took only introduction here, and I open now the floor for discussion. So please, the homework is on the first part only, which is the ijara part. And the next week, inshallah, we will study the sharing contract and see how are they applied. And there will be their own homework on the second part, which is the sharing only. Thank you very much for giving me this time. And of course, those of you who really intend to learn Islamic finance will be with us. And those who could not bear the whole session with us, I hope they will either change their mind, or they got some benefits through some other course. But anyway, I'm willing to continue with you, inshallah, until the end of this course. It may take, as it is now becoming obvious, more than 19 sessions, but that's okay. Inshallah, we will handle it. Thank you again. And if you have any questions, I will be glad to respond to you. If there are no questions, we will say goodbye. Okay. Okay. If there are no questions, we'll see you, inshallah, next week.
إن شاء الله.
السلام عليكم. في
جزاكم
أمان
الله.
الله.
وعليكم السلام.